All right, let's dive into one of America's most haunting crime sprees. It's a case that absolutely terrified a city and left behind questions that, believe it or not, have lingered for more than half a century. It really all starts with this one single chilling number, 13. So just imagine this. Between 1962 and 1964, this was the terrifying reality for the city of Boston. A killer was on the loose, and the entire population was on edge. And a period of panic this intense, it needed a name. And the one that stuck is now infamous, the Boston Strangler. And the attacks, wow, they just kept coming. It was this absolutely brutal, terrifying wave. As you can see here, over just 18 short months, the killer struck again and again, creating this atmosphere of complete and utter fear all across the city. Now, here's something that really threw investigators for a loop from the very beginning. The victims themselves. I mean, look at this. They ranged in age from 19 all the way up to 85. There was no clear type, and that just defied all the typical patterns of serial offenders. So you can imagine people were just terrified. The killer, somehow, was able to talk his way into any woman's apartment. He never forced his way in. That's why the press first called him the Phantom Fiend. It was like he could just materialize right through your front door. And then, right when it felt like the case had hit a total dead end, everything changed in the most shocking way. See, the police pick up this guy, Albert DeSalvo. Now, he was a known petty criminal, but he was on their radar for a totally different set of crimes, things they called the Green Man and Measuring Man schemes. He wasn't even a suspect for the stranglings. But then, while he's in custody, DeSalvo drops an absolute bombshell, first to his cellmate and then to the investigators. He claims he's the guy. He is the Boston Strangler, and he starts describing the crimes in unbelievable detail. It felt like the break everyone had been praying for. And what made his confession so convincing were these tiny, impossible-to-know details that were never released to the public. This thing about the chair became legendary. It seemed like there was no way an innocent person could possibly know something like that. And just like that, it was over. The newspapers screamed it from the headlines. The Strangler was caught. The case was closed. Boston, it seemed, could finally breathe a sigh of relief. But was it really? Because the story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. In fact, the biggest questions were just about to surface. This is where the official story starts to get, well, messy. Because even with those headlines and that confession, the case was so far from being closed. For decades, these serious doubts would just keep popping up, causing the whole thing to unravel. Okay, so get this. Here are the big problems. For one, despite confessing in all that detail, there was zero, and I mean zero, physical evidence linking him to any of the 13 murders. In fact, he was never even put on trial for the stranglings. He was only sentenced for those earlier assaults. That fact alone was enough to fuel doubt for decades. And this slide right here shows you exactly what I'm talking about. If we just look at the final murder, Mary Sullivan's, his confession just falls apart. He said he strangled her with his bare hands. The evidence shows she was strangled with a ligature. He got key facts about the assault wrong. Even the time of death was off. How could the real killer get so many basic facts wrong? And this is why top experts, guys like FBI profiler Robert Ressler, started saying, hang on a second. They championed the theory that these murders were actually the work of several different killers, not just one guy. They thought DeSalvo might just be a compulsive confessor, someone taking credit for crimes he didn't commit. So for almost half a century, this was the huge debate that raged on. Was Albert DeSalvo a cunning serial killer who managed to leave no evidence behind? Or was he just a deeply disturbed man who confessed to things he only read about in the papers? You'd think after all that time, the case would be cold forever, right? But the answer? Well, it had been hiding in plain sight the whole time, preserved in a single, microscopic piece of evidence from way back in 1964. The big breakthrough came from something called Y-DNA analysis. Now, the easiest way to think of it is like this. It's a specific type of DNA that gets passed down directly from father to son. It's an amazing tool for forensics because it can link a male suspect to a crime scene just by testing one of his male relatives. So here's how they finally cracked it in 2013. First, they took that old sample of seminal fluid from Mary Sullivan's murder and retested it with modern tech.
Then they compared the DNA from that sample to Y DNA from DeSalvo's nephew, and they got a match, a near certain match to the DeSalvo family line. That was it. That was the crucial link they needed to get a court order and exhume his body. And there it was. After they exhumed his body, the direct test confirmed it. It was a 1 in a billion match. Albert DeSalvo killed Mary Sullivan. So, science finally delivered a verdict. But, and this is a huge but, in solving one murder, it just blew the door wide open on a dozen other questions. Okay, so let's break down what this actually means. It's simple, but it's also incredibly complex. We now know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Albert DeSalvo was a murderer. The science is undeniable. The case of Mary Sullivan is finally closed. But that brings us back to the one giant, haunting question that still hangs over this entire case. Yes, DNA proved Albert DeSalvo was a killer, but was he the Boston Strangler? Because proving one murder doesn't prove them all. And with no physical evidence in the other 12 cases, the full truth, well, that remains a mystery to this day.